my name is Jessica Notes. I grew up in Washington, PA. I now live in Upper St. Clair with my husband Brian, who's right here, and my daughter Pearson, who's playing. She loves that football game, by the way. Big hit. And my mom Kathy is here. My dad Joe, he's outside. And so I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I work full-time, I'm an assistant managing editor for scientific journals, and I have bipolar 1. So that sort of throws a wrench into things a bit, but I've been living with this disorder. I was diagnosed about 25 years ago, and I have figured out how to live with it, make lifestyle changes. Medication is a key part, but it took me a while. So, my story starts in 1999. I was a sophomore in college. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and I was pre-med. And that was difficult on its own. But then, I was in my sophomore year, and I should backtrack a little bit. So I was diagnosed with clinical depression my freshman year. And if you see me shaking a little bit, I do take lithium, and it has been a lifesaver for me, but I also have some shakiness from it as a side effect. I was diagnosed with depression. I had depression kind of off and on throughout my childhood, and about senior year of high school, it really ramped up, so I started seeing a psychiatrist and taking antidepressants, which did nothing for me. And I didn't know why. So they kept trying different antidepressants, and by the time I got to sophomore year, I was taking a certain one that seemed to be doing something. I didn't feel great, and I didn't feel like myself, but I had more energy. I wasn't sleeping all the time, so that seemed good. And then I just started acting very unlike myself. I became kind of popular, I would say. But before this, I was an introvert, and I was making all these new friends, and then things started getting a little bit weird. So as this was going on, I was talking to my close friends, and I was saying, I don't feel like myself. Something is not right. And they're like, oh no, everybody loves you. They think you're great. Like, they think you're so funny and so cute. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not me. So what is this? I had no knowledge of family history of bipolar disorder or any other serious mental illness. So things go on. I'm losing sleep. I'm not eating very much. I'm extremely thirsty. I didn't know that these could be symptoms of a mental illness. And then one night, I fall out of my top bunk in my dorm room, and for some reason I thought that the devil pushed me out and was trying to kill me. But I knew enough to know that, I shouldn't tell someone that. That doesn't seem right. And so just kind of kept going, losing more and more sleep until I'm not sleeping at all. And that's when I had my first manic episode. And what happened was, I was having all these racing thoughts. I also was now having hallucinations. In the middle of the night, I thought I had x-ray vision, and I could see myself in the mirror, and I also thought that I had suddenly had multiple personalities that fused into one, and I was feeling so energized, and that's how I was trying to explain it. But really, I had read the book Sybil, which is about someone who did have multiple personalities. I had read that book just a year before, so I think I was just sort of manifesting that. That wasn't going on at all. So anyway, that morning, I called my dad very early in the morning. I'm like, he's an early riser. I can call at 5 a.m. It's fine. But I was just bursting to tell someone about all these experiences. So he picked up the phone and was pretty shocked, of course. To me, I thought it was normal. I was just telling him any normal thing. And my dad is actually a therapist. So as he started hearing all of this, I think he put two and two together. He realized that, wow, my daughter might have bipolar disorder. And he was just like, I'm coming up to school, stay put, stay in your dorm room. okay, you know. And so he got there and he called my psychiatrist, since I had the psychiatrist because I had depression. And they're talking and they want me to go to a local hospital, you know, be admitted to the psych ward. And at this point, I'm finally realizing like something is terribly wrong and I really don't want to go to a hospital because I've heard stories, terrible stories about psych wards. So my psychiatrist, for better or for worse, I don't know, she actually released me to my dad and I did not go to the psych ward. So from there was kind of a rocky road of about 8 or 9 years of sort of just trying to get by. I did transfer to W&J and I got my degree not in pre-med. I had to change to English because I just couldn't handle that kind of workload, but I could still read books and I loved reading. So I thought, this is my way to get through school. So I graduated college and I actually moved away. I lived in DC for about 13 years, but looking back, it was probably not a great decision to move so far away from my family when I needed that support. So it took me a really long time. I went through about 3 or 4 psychiatrists before I finally got someone who put me on meds that actually worked. And I'm still with that doctor today. I'm still on the basic medications that I was about 17 years ago is when I got on those meds. And my life completely changed. Within 6 months, I met my husband. I started a job at the company where I still work today. And it was just like a whole new world opened up. And so it can be very difficult to get the right care, to find the right doctors, and it's so difficult for the person, but it's also so difficult for their family and friends. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is, how to support people who have mental illness, and right up front, I'm going to tell you I don't have all the answers. I'm mostly telling you what works for me and for friends of mine who have bipolar. And I want to say, first of all, that the first thing you can do that is actually very easy to do is you can educate yourself about the disorder. So for me, I love it when my friends and family tell me that they're reading a book about bipolar. Maybe you don't have time to read a book, that's fine. Just go on the internet, go and do some research about it so that person doesn't have to answer every little question. It can be really taxing, especially if that person is still struggling. So also, I have a YouTube channel. You can go on my channel. It's called Our Bipolar. Oh, that's my Pittsburgh accent, so it's Our Bipolar, O-U-R. And I have a lot of resources there. I also have a video there. I do interviews sometimes, and my friend Christina Mitchell, she talks all about how to support people with bipolar and schizophrenia. That's on the site more recently. And so that's a great resource too. But in terms of books, Julie Fast is excellent. She has a book called Loving Someone with Bipolar. And she has another book, Take Charge of Bipolar Disorder. So those are really good resources. Also, Kay Jamison, she's in the field. She's at the forefront of the field for bipolar, and she also has bipolar herself, and she has a book called An Unquiet Mind that I just reread, and it is excellent. She's obviously gone very far in her career while having bipolar, and not all of us can do that, but it is a very good resource. Then the way I think about it is, at least for me, I like being treated like anyone else with any kind of physical illness. Let's say someone came home from the hospital and they had broken their leg. What are things that you would do for your friend, a very close friend or a family member that you might not think of to do for someone with a mental illness who's having symptoms? So what are some things you would actually do for that person? You could just call it out. Bring them a meal. Yes, perfect. Bring them a meal, because if someone is having mania or depression with bipolar, they're probably forgetting to eat, and even if they're not, they just don't have the capacity to make their own meals at that time. What else?
Visit them.
Visit them. That's good, but you have to be a little careful with visiting them, only because they are needing a lot of rest at this point. They might need alone time. So if you do visit them, maybe it's great to visit them, but maybe not like asking them a lot of questions, maybe just sort of sitting and watching a movie with them if they can do that, something like that, just being there for them.
Like help with like laundry, stuff around the house.
Yes, perfect. Helping with laundry, maybe like cleaning up, doing dishes, anything that you could help with like that, because they're typically not able to do that for themselves at that point. Anything else? What if they have children or a child?
You could offer to take them places, like if they have soccer practice or something like that.
Yes, offer to take them places, offer to take them for as much time as you can. Maybe it's only an hour, maybe it's a day, maybe it's 2-3 days. I know my parents do that for us sometimes, and sometimes it is for my husband's physical illness and not necessarily for my bipolar. Anything else? Okay, so instead of, if you can't make food, you can always send a gift card, DoorDash, anything like that is great. Oh, and this is something my parents have done, giving me a quiet place to rest, maybe in their home, because maybe like our home, we have an 8-year-old daughter, maybe it's going to be hard for the child to not be making noise, maybe it's hard to kind of like get away. I know in our house sometimes I'll go down to the basement and I'll kind of like, we have a room down there where I can just shut the door and kind of get away, but not everybody has that. So yes, if you can provide a place to rest, that's great. I also said, like, ask them what they need. It might be better to do that to ask when they're stable, because also people, you know, they kind of feel bad. If you ask them something, they might just say, oh, I'm fine, like I don't need anything. Really they do, they just feel bad asking for help. So you have to really know the person too. I also said like sending a card or flowers, like just like we do for anyone who's gone through something, like if someone had broken their leg and you like send them flowers in the hospital or something, like things like that maybe aren't quite as important, but I think it is nice, and I think, you know, we need to be treating a mental illness just like we would any other physical illness. So some other ways to support. This sounds a little opposite of what we might be thinking, but taking care of yourself. That is actually the most important thing you can do for that person, because if you are getting stressed out, maybe this person is in mania and maybe they're lashing out at you somewhat, maybe they're baiting you into arguments. I think I've done that with my husband many times. It is not easy at times to be supportive of someone with a mental illness. So in those cases, rather than staying on with them and really getting frustrated, maybe acting in a way that you're not proud, step away, do what you need to do for yourself and do what de-stresses you. So like for me, I love to be outside, I love to be with my dog, I love to, you know, be with my friends, reading, anything that kind of calms me and can then make me better to get back, you know, and help that other person. Also, have your own support person. Maybe it doesn't have to be thought of in that way, but just talk to your friends, like have someone you can vent to, like you need that outlet as well, and you're doing that for the person that you love, but you also need that kind of outlet for yourself. And just keep in mind also, like if someone is, you know, in depression or mania, I mean for bipolar, that the way that this person is acting is not their personality. Like that is the episode, that is their illness talking. It's really hard to separate that. It's really hard not to blame that person, and that person may be doing their best to stay stable, but it's not possible all the time. And like, I have excellent care. I honestly have one of the best psychiatrists in the country. He actually works with Kay Jamison, and I am on a great medication regimen and all those things, and I take my self-care very, very seriously. I still have symptoms. It still happens probably about once a year, maybe a little less, but it does happen. So even if you're trying so hard, you will still have symptoms, and you have to give that person some grace and understand that this is not their personality, and you know, they're probably going to be really regretful later when they're stable again, like things they may have said to you. So it's very difficult, and I understand that, but just try to keep that in mind. Okay, so we get a little bit more serious. So let's say the person you love who has a mental illness reveals to you if they're having like suicidal ideation, if they're telling you things like that. So what do you do in this situation? Well, you know, of course, I don't have all the answers here, but what I would want someone to do for me is to ask me, like, have you contacted your psychiatrist? Have you told them this? Are you working on this? Is there a plan in place of some sort? Like, are you going to receive more care based on this? And, you know, you'll have to take it from there. And you also, if you have permission from the person, you can contact their doctor if you think that is necessary. Also, you can encourage them to call 988, you know, the suicide hotline. And you can also, if they have a partner or a spouse, you can talk to that person and just see if there is like a next step that is needed. And also, and this is in much more extreme cases, but if your loved one has anosognosia, which I'm guessing most people don't know what that means, but anosognosia is when you have, in this case, when you have a mental illness and you cannot recognize that you have it. You think you're fine. All these symptoms you think are normal. So if you're like totally denying and you're not able to recognize that you have a mental illness, usually those people do not want to take medication. I mean, that's just sort of what ends up happening, because if you think you're fine, why would you need to take any kind of psych meds? So in these extreme cases when someone won't take medication, what can happen is if the loved one is not your child, you know, a child under 18, it is possible to become the person's legal guardian. And then you have a say in if this person takes their medication, like let's say they go off their meds, you can make sure they have to go back in the hospital and get on their meds. So you have some control over the situation. Now, my friend Christina, who I said, you know, I did the video with, she's the legal guardian of her aunt and her mom, who both have bipolar. And so this evolved over years, but they were, you know, like I said, it was an extreme case. They were in and out of hospitals all the time because they wouldn't take meds. Both her mom and her aunt became homeless multiple times. So it was a situation where someone really had to step in. And so Christina did that. And what you do is you have to file paperwork with the court. But as she explained it, it's actually a pretty simple process. It's not all that expensive. So if you want any more information about that, then you could contact Christina. Like I can put you in touch with Christina Mitchell, and she can help you through that process. But that, you know, is in much more extreme cases. And I just wanted to say, to kind of wrap this up, that keep in mind that having a mental illness is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And that can be really hard for people to accept. It probably took me not quite the whole 8 or 9 years when I was struggling, but probably at least 5 years to understand that I have to take care of myself and I have to learn how. Because initially, no doctor told me, like, make sure you're getting enough sleep and not staying up late and, you know, drinking less alcohol and all these little things that I do now. I was not told that, and I was in my 20s, and I just wanted to act like everyone else and go out to bars and clubs until 3 in the morning every night and do all of these things that were really hurting my bipolar and bringing on more symptoms. So again, it's difficult. It's really difficult for the person. It's difficult for the support people. But you do have to understand it is hard to accept. And I was going to say the ultimate positive of supporting someone you love with bipolar or another mental illness is getting them back to you, is when they're feeling better again and you have that person back and you have that relationship with them that you love, because it's very hard. And it can be a thankless job. It can be a thankless job to support someone, because once they're well again, they might not even remember what happened. They might not remember what happened in mania. I mean, that does happen. Sometimes you only remember certain things and not others. So it is something that is, like I said, super difficult for the person, but also for the loved ones. So I think I'll leave it there. But, you know, I know like Matt and myself, we really are examples of people who have gone beyond our mental illnesses and been able, like I said, we're still managing it. It still can be a struggle at times, but people who I don't tell, you know, who don't know that I have bipolar, like anytime I do tell them, they're like, I would have never guessed that. Like, you just don't seem like you have it. I'm like, yeah, that's because I manage it very well and I take care of myself. And when I do have symptoms, you probably don't see me, you know? I'm staying home, I'm taking care of it. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.